into the 2018 format alongside of him.
Yeah, well, I really like the way Kangaskhan has kind of made a resurgence towards the end of the year, particularly here in North America where we have our regional circuit. You know, we do see Mega Kangaskhan coming back, and it's not just going to be one, it's going to be two of them. The teams are finally up on the screen. Wei's team over there on the side, a Bisharp, followed, of course, by Landorus in its Therian form, Kangaskhan, Rotom in its Heat form, the Kartana and Tapu Fini going up against Ryosuke's team of Mega or Kangaskhan, most likely the Mega. Let me not, I'm not putting words in anyone's mouth or any, you know, items in anyone's team builder here. But it is going to be followed by the Cresselia, Landorus in its Therian form, Kartana, the Heatran, and a Tapu Fini of his own.
So one of the things I do when I see teams that look so similar, I mean, here we have 4 out of the 6 Pokemon that are exactly identical, at least in terms of what Pokemon they are, is look at what's different. And in this case, it's going to be that Cresselia and the Bisharp, and then the Rotom Heat, and then the Heatran. And sort of think about how those Pokemon are going to match up against each other, because everything else you imagine is just going to be sort of trading blows, you know. Maybe the Kartana switches in for the Tapu Fini on one side, and then you see something similar on the other side, or what have you. In this case, you know, having that Bisharp, I think, is going to be a huge advantage, because it can not only knock off the items on Ryosuke's side of the field, but it also heavily threatens that Cresselia. You know, Cresselia is a Psychic-type Pokemon. It does not like to get hit by knockoff. It doesn't like to get hit by Sucker Punch. It really just doesn't like Bisharp as a concept, because it can't do things like Icy Wind either due to its Defiant ability. So we're not going to see it yet. I think that's a very smart move. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's hanging out in the back of Yin's party.
Yep, well, it is finally time to get this one underway, and I'm not honestly sure what year we're looking at in this format. Cresselia and Kangaskhan for Ryosuke, and a Landorus and Kangaskhan for Waiyin. These are actually leads that we saw way back in 2015 so commonly. The difference here, though, Waiyin actually gets the Intimidate ability into play. So Landorus gets Intimidate down over on the opposing Kangaskhan, meaning Ryosuke's damage probably a little bit slowed down for the initial part of this game.
You know, probably, but having these two Kangaskhan out on the field turn 1, to me, implies that we're going to be seeing something more like a fake-out situation to give maybe the Cresselia an opportunity to Ice Beam or otherwise attack that Landorus on the inside of the field.
Well, it's not going to be attacking it right now, as Cresselia does leave the field in place of Ryosuke's own Landorus. He saw the Intimidate from Waiyin and wanted one of his own, so it's going to be really effective against both of her Pokemon. The Kangaskhan and Landorus now doing slightly limited damage. It's time, of course, for the Kangaskhan Mega Evolutions. No shocks here. Waiyin's Kangaskhan will be Mega Evolving first, could be indicative of a potential speed tie, or even just being naturally quicker, as Ryosuke's follows suit without hesitation, ready to go and fight in this one. I think the fake-out trades are going to be important. Ryosuke's does move first now, so it is an exact tie in the speed.
Unless Kangaskhan did not go for fake-out.
Yeah, Kangaskhan doesn't go for it over on Waiyin's side. Just manages to get off a low kick and deal more damage there, so a big turn, I'd say, for Waiyin, getting good damage down on the Kangaskhan.
Definitely, but that Intimidate from Ryosuke's Landorus definitely made a difference there. If you look at how much health that Kangaskhan on Ryosuke's side of the field has left, it's down to just below half, which means without that Intimidate, that low kick definitely would have been within knockout range. So I think a good idea to fake out the Landorus there. You know, the tricky thing about Landorus is you never really know what they're going to do. In this case, it could have gone for something like a Rock Slide. It could have just attacked, maybe even had something like a knockoff to threaten that Cresselia. But now, you know, it was stopped for a turn, allowed Ryosuke to get his own Intimidate on the field, and now sort of, I think, force Waiyin into a spot where she's going to have to switch one of these Pokemon out. And I'm glad to see it's that Kangaskhan, because there might be a fake out saved for later. Yeah, the Kangaskhan is leaving the field in place of the Rotom Heat on Waiyin's side, and the Kangaskhan over on Ryosuke's side is leaving in place of the Cresselia. So we do see 3 of the Pokemon for each of them. The switching isn't going to stop right now. Waiyin U-turns out her own Landorus and gets an attack down onto the Cresselia. It's super effective, still been intimidated, so a little bit of damage, but it's certainly something, and against something bulky like a Cresselia, every little helps. Kangaskhan does come back in, now not afflicted by the Intimidate, and this Rotom Heat switching looks even better. Its Levitate ability means it's not going to be affected by this Earthquake. Only the Kangaskhan on its return to the field taking damage from the Landorus on Ryosuke's side.
Kangaskhan takes it with aplomb. Pretty solid turn there, I think, from both trainers. Nobody really giving up a big advantage.
No, and I think that's going to be key as we go into, the next few turns, is that if we keep seeing these trainers trade, a little bit of damage, a little bit of switching, I think it's going to come down to who's going to make a big play coming up first. I don't know what this Rotom Heat's going to do. Maybe it'll try to Will-O-Wisp, something like the Landorus, but, if Ryosuke's Landorus is not holding something like a Choice Scarf or a Choice Band, it can definitely switch its attack and maybe threaten that Rotom with something like a Rock Slide. So there's definitely a lot of variables still in play, but it looks like we're learning a little bit more about that Landorus.
Yeah, Landorus is going to protect, so not holding on the choice items. Cresselia also protecting, so Ryosuke clearly doesn't want to waste a turn getting caught with a Fake Out. Will head towards the Landorus, a little bit of information there, and Rotom does reveal the Will-O-Wisp. So Landorus is going to be a little bit threatened if that connects. But we do know it has the option to switch its move around.
Interesting that the Cresselia knows Protect. That's something that you never really see on Cresselia. Cresselia, more bulky, more sort of one of those Pokemon that you want to stick around on the field and do things like Icy Wind or otherwise disrupt your opponent. So definitely something that Waiyin's going to have to keep in mind for later, knowing that this Cresselia can Protect. But that's also sort of one move slot that Cresselia couldn't be doing something like Trick Room. So I like it. I think that it's going to give Ryosuke a lot of flexibility going into this match.
Well, no fear, no switching from these trainers. It's going to be a double edge out of the Kangaskhan on Waiyin side. First hit brings the Cresselia down to under half and activates its Citrus Berry. And then the second hit kind of undoes that all. Kangaskhan takes some recoil damage for its trouble. And Landorus will hit a Stone Edge onto this Rotom. It's not enough to get the knockout, as we are going to see a Z move right now.
Firium Z on that Rotom Heat, not something you see common at all. I think if we're harkening back to the 2015 days, obviously Z moves didn't exist back then, so Rotom more likely to carry something like the Citrus Berry, but here instead crashing into that Cresselia, that might be enough to just knock it out.
Yep, Cresselia is gone. The Inferno Overdrive is enough to take the knockout there, but a lot of damage put down back on Waiyin side, even though she does manage to get the first knockout of the game. Big turn there. I think the big thing to note is how little attention was paid to Landorus, probably assuming that after showing the Will-O-Wisp it was going to switch out, and it doesn't. It just stays in, manages to get a Stone Edge off.
Yeah, but that Stone Edge still didn't do enough to knock out that Rotom, and as a result, we know that the Rotom has Overheat now, actually, as its Fire-type move, so that's really good information, I think, for Ryosuke moving forward into potentially a Game 2 situation. What I want to talk about, actually, is the remaining 3 Pokemon that Ryosuke has on the field. He has the Landorus, he has the Kangaskhan, and now he has the Kartana, so all these Pokemon are not bulky. They like to be on the offensive. They like to attack. And with the Rotom Heat and the Kangaskhan on Waiyin's side of the field at below half of their health, and the Kartana most likely outspeeding both of them, I think Ryosuke has an opportunity here to go from being down 1 Pokemon to being up 1 Pokemon and have that advantage.
Yeah, it could be a really big swing of momentum here. But the thing to note is all 3 of the remaining Pokemon on Ryosuke's side are actually predominantly physical attackers, unless there's a surprise. So that Landorus in the back for Waiyin could be so important. If it can come in, get an Intimidate down, could be a really big deal. Rotom is going to be given a chance to play, though.
Definitely. That Mega Kangaskhan's back out on the field, and if it doesn't get knocked out, maybe it'll Fake Out something next turn.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have to get in safely. The Landorus immediately coming in for Waiyin, getting that valuable Intimidate down on both the Kangaskhan and the Kartana. This could be enough to, keep something around a little bit later in the game. Kangaskhan is going to go with a Sucker Punch. Doesn't want to be playing around with the standard issue turn order there. Getting in one a little bit early, but Kartana is going to immediately throw its Z move back. Ryosuke saw what Waiyin's was and decides that it's time for one of his own. The Bloom Doom from Kartana is going to be doing so much damage.
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the most popular hold items on that Kartana right now, barring something like a Focus Sash, because Bloom Doom, it has great typing, especially against something like a Landorus, and it's just so powerful. I mean, that easily got that knockout.
That Landorus absolutely punished on the way in, and Kartana will get a Beast Boost. So the attack goes up, which makes up for that Intimidate. Waiyin's last 3 are going to be an interesting set right now. Obviously, this turn has to be a little bit careful of the Fake Out. And Tapu Fini against a Kartana is probably not what you wanted to end the game.
Definitely not. I mean, I think Ryosuke's win condition right now is probably to try and knock out that Kangaskhan, maybe even double target it with both his Kartana and his own Kangaskhan, you know, knock it out and then save the Tapu Fini for after that. I mean, yes, there is still the Rotom heat in the back of Waiyin's party, but there's still the Landorus in the back of his own, so he has many options here.
Yeah, the Rotom is coming in for the Kangaskhan, probably just sacrificing itself to this double target, I think. Fake Out will connect with the Tapu Fini, so that's going to be doing a lot, and it looks like Kartana will be going with Sacred Sword, was heading towards the Kangaskhan, but Rotom just knocked out for its troubles on the switch-in. It's now 2-3 in Ryosuke's advantage, and Kartana's Beast Boost has taken effect once more. It's now boosted up a stage of attack. It's going to be pretty comfortably knocking things out.
Yeah, this Kangaskhan might be able to get a little bit of a cheeky knockout on the opposing Kangaskhan with that Sucker Punch we saw earlier on in this game one, but there's still going to be that Kartana, it's still going to be at +1 attack, and there's still the Landorus in the back. So I think if I were in Waiyin's spot, I'd be trying to figure out, is there any information I need to go into game two?
Yeah, you're at the point now where it's a real uphill struggle, but you've got to keep playing it out. Particularly this early on in a tournament, you want to make sure you get as much information as possible. Ryosuke will take his Kangaskhan back, bringing the Landorus, making sure that Waiyin's Kangaskhan isn't able to deal the valuable damage that it will need to do to earn her a win in this game. Tapu Fini's attack isn't really the concern in this one. Kartana will protect as well, maybe fishing to see if it can get a little bit of information. Kangaskhan's Fake Out does go towards Kartana, and Tapu Fini's Muddy Water will of course land on the Protect of Kartana, but it will catch Landorus on the way in.
Yeah, you know, maybe an accuracy drop here could be helpful, but and definitely how much damage it will do to that Landorus. It doesn't look like it did a lot, so it could be an indication that this Tapu Fini might be a little bit bulkier, you know, in terms of how it was trained.
That's something Ryosuke is going to have to do between games now, is figure out what the item is. He hasn't seen anything, but he knows how his Landorus is trained. He knows how much damage it should be taking from a Tapu Fini's Muddy Water. If he's under or over where he's expecting it to be, could be a very interesting piece of information. I don't want to say to confirm with yourself, but to guess on and to bank on for the rest of the games.
Definitely. I mean, that's basically what you need to figure out here, and I think it was a great call from Waiyin there, going for the Protect on the Tapu Fini.
Yeah, Tapu Fini does protect itself as Kartana takes a Sucker Punch for its troubles. The superpower, though, comes out from the Landorus and gets an easy knockout onto this Kangaskhan. Its attack falls, but I really don't think it's going to be relevant for the rest of this game. Just the Tapu Fini against everything, and Kartana's already ready to start knocking it out with Leaf Blade. So it looks like game one heading to Ryosuke, and we're going to be moving very promptly to game two.
So let's take a moment then to talk about adjustments, because I think we saw a lot of really interesting techs on Waiyin's team that didn't quite come into play like she wanted them to. You know, I think that Sucker Punch, I really love that on her Kangaskhan. I wish we saw more of it, actually. You know, I think Ryosuke was switching just enough where she was probably a little bit hesitant to use it, because if you do switch your Pokemon, you won't attack, and then Sucker Punch won't connect. But overall, like, looking at the health of the Pokemon that are remaining on the field, you know, they could be in Sucker Punch range. You know, if they're not intimidated, if that Kangaskhan has the chance to go for that attack, I think that it could definitely be used to pick up some knockouts going into game two. But she needs to play to sort of give herself those openings, and I just felt like she was being very defensive overall, and I don't think that's really a strategy that works out when you're playing essentially what boiled down to a mirror match.
Yeah, the one thing I'd like to talk about, though, between games, and it's kind of an interesting, is the Landorus on Ryosuke's side. So, you know, we talked about having Protect on Cresselia, but we also saw Protect on Landorus in the same turn. So the interesting thing about that is it immediately rules out a handful of items. You can't say that it's a Choice Scarf, a Choice Band, an Assault Vest. Definitely not.
No.
We also saw the Z move from Kartana,
yes,
which would indicate that's potentially, you know, where the Z Crystal is. But we didn't see anything out of this Landorus. We also saw a couple other changes. It had Stone Edge over Rock Slide.
It did.
Which I think is a very, very interesting and potentially, you know, game-changing adaptation.
It's interesting because it's one of those things where, believe it or not, Stone Edge is actually less accurate than Rock Slide, but it does carry with it the opportunity to get a critical hit. So this could be an indication that Ryosuke has brought this or trained this Landorus to thrive in very specific situations. I think there's probably a knockout that he was looking for with that Stone Edge over the Rock Slide. Might not be against this Rotom Heat, but looking at how much damage it did in game 1, if he does get lucky and if he does connect the Stone Edge with that Rotom Heat and get a critical hit, then that's a knockout right there.
Yeah, that's what you really need to be doing, is consistently knocking things out with that Landorus.
Yes.
We did see Waiyin lock her team in first, so even though Ryosuke won game 1, still a little bit hesitant to just go for the exact same strategy. Maybe looking for some adaptations, maybe some things that he saw that he wasn't too happy playing against. But Waiyin already seems to have figured out what she wants to do to try and bring this game to her way and force us into a game 3 here at the World Championships.
I mean, there's definitely also the threat of the Bisharp being led, and if I were Ryosuke, I think that's what I would be hesitant about, because as you can see, he did decide to lead the Intimidate user on his team, that Landorus Therian, but fortunately for him, and maybe unfortunately for Waiyin, she did lead the Kartana and the Kangaskhan, which will both now have a lowered attack stage because of that Intimidate. So yes, she does have that Kangaskhan out on the field. It can fake out one of these Pokemon and give her Kartana an opportunity to do something, but we're not really sure what this Kartana is going to do. Maybe something like a Leaf Blade into that Landorus slot, try to knock it out before whatever item it's holding comes into play.
Yeah, I mean, trying to get these early knockouts is something that we didn't see in the game before.
Oh, definitely
we saw like
not.
a slower opening, but now we're in a position where, maybe there's an opportunity for an early knockout. And I'd actually like to see a little bit more of this Cresselia. We saw very little from it in the previous game. Of course, Kangaskhan Mega Evolving, pretty standard stuff.
I think it's the definition of standard almost at this point.
Yeah, Landorus is going to keep himself safe from a potential fake out. Doesn't want to get caught by that, will protect. And Cresselia is going to follow suit as well. So another turn where Ryosuke manages to just stall out the protect. Doesn't want to get caught, or stall out the fake out. Doesn't want to get caught by it. Just going to throw out those protects. And Kartana's going to try and Leaf Blade that Cresselia as well. So pretty much a slow and steady turn 1.
Yeah.
But no switches, interestingly enough. Nobody's trying to immediately reposition. Ryosuke prioritizing being safe against the fake out. Probably enjoys the board position right there as we move directly into the following turn. Leaf Blade onto that Landorus from the Kartana. Kangaskhan follows up with a double edge. Going to be stretching for it after the Intimidate, but gets it very comfortably. And the Landorus that was so problematic is already gone.
Yeah, that's definitely going to change things up as we go into the remainder of this game too. But Cresselia is going to help out with that Icy Wind. Again, more information. I think we only saw it use Protect in game 1. So I think the speed control is going to help, especially if, like in game 1, Ryosuke has maybe his own Kartana in the back. And we already know it does carry Sacred Sword. So definitely going to threaten down that Kangaskhan. Could potentially also threaten down the opposing Kartana. So even though the Landorus was knocked out, I think that Intimidate was really what Ryosuke wanted from it. Yes, there is still the threat of the Rotom Heat in the back of Waiyin's party, but he has options on how to handle it, I think, at this point, even without that Landorus.
Yeah, I think getting around it is going to be, I don't want to say easy, but very, very potential at all. The Kartana out, though, will kind of show off maybe a little bit of a comparison between the Kartana. It'll be very interesting to see which is trained a little bit differently. Maybe we'll get some more information about Waiyin's Kartana and just say, hey, look, I know, how is this one trained? We know that Bloom Doom is over on Ryosuke's side of the field. We're not going to learn anything about it right now. That's the problem.
That is the problem, but we do know that she brought that Rotom Heat back into battle.
Yeah, the Rotom Heat comes back. Kartana's going to get caught with a couple of hits from the Kangaskhan for its troubles. And the Sacred Sword actually goes towards the Rotom. That's probably where it wants it to go, but the Icy Winds are just going to keep coming from this Cresselia. Just keep on chipping them down, but making sure that Ryosuke's team is moving first until we see some switches from way inside of the field.
And that's going to be very important now that the Kartana is out versus the Rotom Heat. I think that'll give this Kartana a little bit of flexibility if it decides to stay on the field. I'm not really sure what Ryosuke is thinking right now. I think that if we do see that Kartana switch out, it's going to be because he has something potentially like that Heatran in the back of his party, going to try to get that, Flash Fire boost instead of, a knocked out Kartana. But if it's something more like the Kangaskhan, we'll probably see that Kartana stay in, try try to get one attack off before it's ultimately going to be knocked out by, you know, whatever this Rotom Heat decides to do. Or it could just switch out itself.
Yeah, Waiyin is going to be bringing back the Rotom Heat. Doesn't want to try and get one of those fire attacks onto the Kartana, which would be super effective, but prioritizing the Intimidate from Landorus right there. Going to be absolutely essential against this Kartana. Kangaskhan, keeping with the cheeky Sucker Punch there, knows an Icy Wind's coming out and manages to connect something onto the Cresselia to get some damage down. Kartana will be Sacred Swording after that Intimidate, and he goes towards the Landorus, so not much damage there. Cresselia not Icy Winding when the Landorus comes in, just Psychicking and doing a good amount of damage right there.
That was a really interesting turn. You know, I think that Kartana was probably expecting something to switch in for that Rotom Heat. I'm not really sure what or why the Sacred Sword was the choice there. Maybe looking to get a little bit of damage onto that Rotom Heat, actually. And that, you know, that probably was the most effective move that it has in its arsenal to attack it. But overall, you know, really interesting, especially since that Cresselia decided to go for the Psychic as well. So if I had to guess what just happened, I think Ryosuke was not expecting the Kartana to be around right now to use Protect.
Yeah, that's probably not the standard position. Sucker Punch is going to fail from this Kangaskhan, so we may get a little bit of information there. And the Landorus over on Waiyin's side of the field does decide to knock off against this Cresselia, gets a lot of damage down. But it might be Landorus's last stand. It gets caught by an Icy Wind for its troubles. That's gone, and Kangaskhan keeps getting slower.
So Sucker Punch was targeting down that Kartana that past turn, which makes sense. You know, we saw the Kartana go for the Sacred Sword before. It probably would have done it again, but this time target down the Kangaskhan to get that knockout. So always important to get a little bit of chip damage in when you have the option. But I feel bad for this Cresselia because even though it's been doing so well, it's probably not going to have the opportunity to get one more attack in. And again, it's all going to come down to what this last Pokemon that Ryosuke brought to the game is. You know, I think that it has to be the Mega Kangaskhan of his own at this point, which means he's probably going to want to be careful about when exactly he sends it in. I don't think he'll switch it in. If I had to guess, this Kartana probably will try to knock out the Kangaskhan. Cresselia will get knocked out, and then we'll have a 2 versus 2 situation, and that's where it's going to get really interesting because we already know the Rotom H does have Will-O-Wisp on it.
Yeah, this Kangaskhan's kind of forced to keep Sucker Punching though because it's so slow
definitely.
at this point. So I think it's a case for Waiyin just being able to make sure you land the Sucker Punches. You're not going to be able to land one on a protecting Cresselia though, so Kangaskhan's Sucker Punch is going to fail. Kartana is going to Sacred Sword from Waiyin's side first, hits the other Kartana and knocks it out. So now a very sizable Pokemon advantage there. The Beast Boost will activate, and I don't think this turn could have got much better for her.
No, and that was the key information that we were missing, I think, is how these Kartanas match up against each other. And if that was a speed tie, that's really unfortunate for Ryosuke. But, you know, again, good information to know. You cannot count on your Kartana outspeeding the opposing Kartana going into Game 3.
No, that's something you just can't bank on.
You just can't.
We do see, of course, that Kangaskhan rounding out Ryosuke's 4, but it's one of his remaining 2 in the equivalent on Waiyin's side. It's going to be 3. Taking a little bit of damage, but the Cresselia over on Ryosuke's side is so weak. And of course, you've got to be careful. You know, this Kangaskhan can still Sucker Punch it. I think if Waiyin can just buy a little bit of time, maybe get round this fake out turn from Ryosuke's Kangaskhan, then put herself in a really good position. Yeah,
I think Ryosuke's only option, honestly, is to try and maybe fake out that Kangaskhan, hope that the Kartana targets down his own Kangaskhan and that something happens so it's able to hold on, and then the Cresselia can get one Icy Wind in, but that is such a tall ask. Yep, I can see why the double protect wins happens.
Ryosuke's going to get the double protect on Cresselia. Kangaskhan is going to fake out here, will target down Kartana, so that's going to just do a little more damage. It all adds up. And Kangaskhan's Sucker Punch is going to fail. Kartana flinches and can't move this turn. So Ryosuke did manage to buy himself a little time.
I don't know if that time's going to be enough, though. Like, how does this Kangaskhan knock out a Kartana with Sacred Sword, an opposing Kartana, and then a Rotom Heat that still has access to a Z move? Like, I think this game is pretty much over, but, you know, in terms of information here, we've already learned that the Kartana on his side of the field is potentially slower than her Kartana. Maybe looking to see how these Kangaskhan match up a little bit more. I don't think we saw that shake out beyond the low kick from Game 1. I think we also don't know what what Kangaskhan's fourth move is yet, so could be an opportunity to learn it here, but I really like Waiyin's switch here to hide that.
Yeah, it's a good switch into the Rotom Heat coming in. It's going to be a Kangaskhan Sucker Punch from the other side of the field right now into this Kartana. I guess that's the game we're playing at this juncture. Kartana, though, will just Leaf Blade this Cresselia, get rid of it for once and for all. It's been on the field since turn 1. Just sat there going consistently with the damage. Kartana gets its Beast Boost, and now it's a 3-on-1 situation with just a Kangaskhan on Ryosuke's side of the field.
You have to wonder if Waiyin's going to note the fact that that Cresselia was on the field for this entirety of the game and, you know, use that to adjust going into game 3. I really like how she played this game. You know, she definitely was more on the offensive, but knowing that Ryosuke essentially had this Pokemon stuck on the field for the entirety of the game, I think that's going to be really important information for her to carry forward, especially since, again, you know, she seems to have so many different options here for how to handle that Cresselia.
I mean, the comeback could start now for Ryosuke, though. I mean, you've got to look at it. He's got a pretty healthy Kangaskhan there. And if you look over onto Waiyin's side of the field, that Kartana's low. That's in Sucker Punch range. And, I mean, the Kangaskhan is a hit pretty much above half health.
It is,
you know, potentially able to just trade things around.
Oh, see, this was what I was wondering, because if this Kangaskhan did not know Protect, then the game was over.
Yep.
But there it is. So it looks like Ryosuke bought himself an option. What would it be, like a low kick critical hit that he would need to be able to win this game?
But I mean, he's got to have access to it, and it just seems unlikely that low kick could be there, considering what we've seen. Of course, Kartana is going to be able to get the Sacred Sword off, so no Sucker Punches this time. And after the Beast Boost, Waiyin's going to take game number 2 here and send us to game 3 here in Nashville.
Yeah, that was a really exciting match. Again, I loved her adjustments moving forward into that. And really, I think she just has to sort of play the same going into this game 3. You know, she didn't even use her Z move. That Rotom Heat just kind of was like around on the field long enough to allow her some switching.
It's an interesting one. I think that Rotom Heat afforded a number of opportunities, which I was very interested to see. But I think Ryosuke losing that Landorus in turn 1 was absolutely huge, because you didn't have the Intimidate as an option to switch later. So I was really curious about how that one kind of shook out. It's like, can he handle Waiyin's team without consistent Intimidates?
I
the
don't
evidence
know.
of game 2 strongly suggests no.
It does, but at the same time, you have to wonder if other things came into play. Remember, we saw those Kartana match up, and we saw Waiyin's Kartana outspeed Ryosuke, so I don't know. I think it's going to be a toss-up. Like, I think that if one of these trainers decides to do something completely different from what we saw in game 1 and 2, that might be enough to give them advantage. But I think it's more going to be the little things that decide this game. You know, which Kartana moves first, which Kangaskhan moves first. You know, who's able to put their opponent's Pokemon within range of getting knocked out by something from that Kartana or from the Sucker Punch.
The big thing I'd like to see, honestly, is the Bisharp. I know it's a bit of a stretch.
I want to see it too.
It's so good against the Landorus Cresselia, but the things it's scared of, you know, it's scared of Kartana, it's scared of Heatran, and we've seen Kartana in both games. You know,
with the Sacred Sword as well.
Yeah, the chances of the 4 Pokemon being picked, you know, on Ryosuke's side of the field, none of them having an answer to Bisharp, I think is a mistake he can't make and won't make in this game. The leads are on the field, though, Kangaskhan and Kartana over on Waiyin's side, and it's going to be Kartana and Cresselia over on Ryosuke's side.
Well, I think this was an indication that Ryosuke was afraid of that Bisharp coming out in game 3, because while Cresselia is out on the field where it likes to be, you know, it is going to be that Kartana that is its partner, and I think that's a great adjustment for him. You know, again, I think a lot of this is going to come down to how these Kartana will match up in turn 2. I wouldn't be surprised to see a double protect from Ryosuke in game 1, and it looks like Waiyin. Oh, she brought it! She brought it!
Yeah, Bisharp is here, switching in place of that Kartana. Kartana switching out on Ryosuke's side of the field, and Landorus has made an appearance. So we are going to see the interaction every Bisharp player dreams of. Landorus is Intimidate, connects with Kangaskhan, does the usual, but it will also connect with Bishop and activate its Defiant. So instead of losing a stage of attack, it manages to gain one. Kangaskhan's going to Mega Evolve right now, nothing new there. And this fake out could be so important. If it goes to the Cresselia, then there's going to be nothing coming out of Ryosuke's side. It does go to the Landorus, and we are going to see what can happen. Icy Wind!
No! Oh no! What a great switch! Yet another Defiant boost for that Bisharp!
Yeah,
this is nuts!
Defiant is going to activate again because the speed has fallen. It doesn't have to be your attack that falls to activate Defiant. Bishop is now at 3 increased stages of attack, and to be quite frank about the matter, anything it sucker punches is going to get knocked out. So the pressure right now, even though the Bishop is super boosted, is with Waiyin.
It is.
Because you need to hit sucker punch in the right spot every time.
Yes, but I think that's something that she can do. I mean, I feel like the targeting the Cresselia here is pretty obvious if you're going for the sucker punch, but remember, this Cresselia has Protect, so...
Wait. Targeted down the Landorus slot
Hidden
with
Power.
the sucker punch. It obviously doesn't land, but Hidden Power, which is super effective on the Bishop, will connect. Kangaskhan's going to start hitting that Cresselia on Bishop's behalf. But Bishop is not in a position it wants to be. It doesn't want to be this weak. It needs to get one of these big sucker punch turns off. I don't think this one's going to be it. I think you have to play around the Kangaskhan, but Cresselia could be in trouble soon.
Definitely. That Cresselia, though, Hidden Power Fire, it's like we've really gone back to the era of 2015.
Could be ground.
Or it could also be ground. That's very true. I just like to assume if there's a hidden power and we're talking about 2015, it's going to be fire.
Yep, well, the Landorus is switching in on Waiyin's side of the field. That's going to get a nice Intimidate down on Ryosuke's Kangaskhan, so that's certainly going to help out. But this Bishop's still in a little bit of trouble, I hate to say it. Probably just going to have to play it safe on this turn. Mega Evolution finally from Ryosuke's Kangaskhan. Going to be able to activate the Parental Bond ability, do even more damage. And I think it's going to be a safe one. Protect over on the Bishop. Not a danger there. Doesn't want to get Fake Out and Hidden Powered. That looks like not the choice from Ryosuke. Is Fake Out in the other slot, making a good prediction over on this as Psychic follows up into that slot, so this Landorus has taken a lot of damage for its troubles.
Yeah, poor Cresselia, though. I think it has to use Psychic at this point. You know, that Hidden Power, if it's ground, it's not going to do any damage to the Landorus. If it's fire, it's hardly going to do any damage. So really forced to use that attack.
And got to be terrified of Icy Wind.
Oh, definitely got to be terrified of using Icy Wind because that Bisharp is still on the other side of the field. Going into this turn, I think Ryosuke is going to be forced to switch that Cresselia out and just hope that this Kangaskhan can pick up the knockout on that Bisharp and just remove it from the field because it is so scary. It's really forced Ryosuke to sort of focus in on that single Pokemon while Waiyin's other Pokemon are free to, you know, start doing a little bit of chip damage, start switching around, start intimidating the Pokemon on his side of the field. And that's what's so beautiful about running Bisharp in a format where Intimidate is so popular, and it looks like Cresselia is just knocked out.
Yeah, Cresselia trying to make the big play, does get knocked out immediately. Bishop losing some of its HP with the Life Orb from that one, so these Sucker Punches are going to hurt. U-turn into that Kangaskhan on Ryosuke's side of the field is going to be doing a little bit of damage, but this Kangaskhan is still free to move. Could just knock out the Bishop after all of these boosts. Kartana switches in place of this. The return, though, over towards the Steel type, it's so low, doesn't even need the second hit from Parental Bond, so those 3 stages from Defiant boosting already removed from play. A 1-for-1 trade in this turn, but one of the biggest threats, I think, over on Waiyin's side has been taken out, and I'd say that's more valuable to remove than the Cresselia.
Without a doubt, but look at the 3 Pokemon remaining on each side of the field. I'll give you a hint, they're identical. It's Kangaskhan, Kartana, and Landorus Therian, so really going to come down to how these Pokemon are going to interact. You know, which Pokemon are going to be faster, which Pokemon are going to be slower. What is that Landorus holding? I mean, looking at how the Intimidates happened this turn, it does appear that Waiyin's Landorus is going to be faster and might be able to do something with that, but who knows at this point? It's really anyone's game, and I'm really liking how, you know, Waiyin's and Ryosuke as well has done like an amazing job of keeping those items a secret going all the way up to this point.
Yeah, and I think the big thing for both these trainers is actually going to be the execution of their Kartana play. If they can get the big damage out consistently before Intimidates just come over and over again, then they're going to put themselves in a good position. Can they get a beast boost with it? Player who gets a beast boost is going to be really in the driving seat, particularly if they can make up for an earlier Intimidate. Really curious to see what Kartana on Waiyin's side goes for this time. It's going to be a switch out from the Landorus. Wants to save Intimidate for later.
He does, and that Kartana on Ryosuke's side of the field as well. So interesting matchup indeed.
Yeah, the Kartana over on Waiyin's side will be given an opportunity to maybe try and take on that other Kartana. But before that even happens, Landorus is going to start with the Rock Slides. We know how Rock Slides make a win condition out of nothing as the Sacred Sword lands into that protecting Kangaskhan. And both boards had a little bit of a rejig there. I think a very safe play from Ryosuke there, which puts him in a good position to use that Landorus Intimidate later. That's going to be so important.
Yeah, but Waiyin is still more than happy probably to switch out her own Landorus, so it's going to be interesting. You know, I think that we're going to see sort of similar turns play out, maybe even alternating from each side of the field from both these trainers. I think it's going to come down to who decides to, or who gets the next knockout first. I would not be surprised if this Kartana tries to go for something big here to tip the momentum in Ryosuke's favor.
Well, it needs to do something because it keeps getting hit by Intimidates from Ryosuke's Landorus. These Pokemon are going to be doing minuscule amounts of damage, but you've got secondary effects to fish for. Rock Slide comes out once again from Waiyin's side of the field. Kartana does manage to move before Ryosuke's Kartana again with a Leaf Blade, not doing too much damage, and Kartana on Ryosuke's side of the field does flinch. So even though it's taking a modicum of health off its bar every single time, if it's not able to move, it's not able to deal damage.
I think that confirms the Choice Scarf hold item on Waiyin's Landorus as well, which this is the situation, I think, where you want that, you know, Choice Scarf Rock Slide. Even though it's one of those moves that, you know, yes, it's not very accurate. It doesn't really do a lot of damage on occasion. Really, it's those flinches that you're looking to help you out in situations like this. And I mean, she's gotten one. Certainly she can win, I think, without relying on those flinches moving forwards, but every little bit helps. I mean, as we already saw, that Kartana on Ryosuke's side of the field could not attack. It could have been going for a Sacred Sword, could have gotten a critical hit and knocked out her own Kartana.
Well, I think the big thing here is getting the Landorus back in, maybe a little later, so you can change up its moves, because Rock Slide isn't going to help you win the game right now.
It's not, but it can buy you more time, which might be what she's prioritizing.
No, Kartana is going to detect, so it's going to be a slow and steady one from Waiyin this time. Another Rock Slide. Tiny amounts of damage every single time, but just hoping that no one gets to attack. Leaf Blade comes out, though, from Ryosuke's side of the field, connects with Landorus, and I think that puts him in such a commanding position right now. He's been doing so well, getting chip damage down, you know, earlier in the game. Being able to pick that up, get a Beast Boost, and remove the potential Intimidator for later. Fantastic play by him, and I'd definitely say he's in the driving seat, not just with the Pokemon advantage, but the Pokemon in that advantage being Landorus.
Yes, and I would not be surprised if that Landorus makes an appearance this turn, because when your opponent's down to 2 Pokemon and they're both physical attackers, you know, you want to get that Intimidate down on those Pokemon as quickly as possible. You know, it might even be a good opportunity here for Ryosuke to try to predict which Pokemon that Waiyin's got to try and fake out if she decides to do that, and switch the Landorus into that spot. But more likely than not, if I were in her shoes, I'd probably be going on the offensive this turn. I don't think fake out's really going to, again, help her win, kind of like what you were saying with those Rock Slides. She needs big damage this turn.
Yeah, well, that damage is going to be limited. Landorus on Ryosuke's side does come back in, gets another Intimidate down, and these Intimidates, they're stuck. You can't switch out and get rid of them. The only way to alleviate that is going to be through Beast Boosting. Kartana over on Ryosuke's side of the field is going to protect itself. Protect over detect, interesting little note there. As Fake Out lands on the Landorus, will not get the knockout there. Kartana's Sacred Sword, though, will follow up and get the knockout. So we are finally down to a 2v2 situation. Identical Pokemon, but a difference, of course, in where the Intimidates have gone. Kartana's Beast Boost is going to help alleviate that, but this turn is going to be where Ryosuke has the option for a Fake Out of his own.
And I think that Fake Out has to go into Waiyin's Kartana. I mean, we saw it move faster than his own Kartana in that past turn. We know that the Kartana has that Sacred Sword, definitely threatens both the Pokemon on Ryosuke's side of the field after that Beast Boost. So that is the thing you have to be afraid of right now. I mean, this Kangaskhan can only do so much relative to a Kartana. You know, so maybe try and fake out that Kartana, hope that the Kangaskhan won't be able to deal a knockout, and who knows, maybe even hope that you can knock out that opposing Kartana, but then it could always detect.
Well, the big thing here as well to note is Waiyin has low kick on her Kangaskhan.
She does, but will low kick do enough to knock out that Kartana?
No, Kartana is a origami Pokemon.
Exactly.
It's made of paper, and the attack damage being based on weight means that it's not going to do much at all. On the flip side of that, Kangaskhan is a big Pokemon.
But it's
does
not
take
enough.
a lot of damage from the low kick. We do see an extension of the hand. A Z move coming out right now. Bloom Doom from Ryosuke's Kartana should be enough to pick up one of those knockouts that is required. Do get to see where he targets with it, just for good measure, maybe a little bit of information about what he considers a bigger threat for some of his opponents later in the tournament.
Probably the Kangaskhan.
Yeah, Bloom Doom does connect with Kangaskhan. It failed to get that knockout, and it is going to easily knock out in return. The Kartana wasn't able to move because of the fake out and a beast boost on Ryosuke's side of the field as well. Looks like it's pretty much all said and done right now.
You have to wonder, though. I mean, that low kick was so close to getting that knockout on Ryosuke's Kangaskhan. What if that Intimidate hadn't have happened? You know, we'd have these two Kartanas staring each other down with almost identical amounts of damage on each. That would have been quite the nail-biter.
Yeah, it would have been so close if Kartana was just one-on-one with Kartana. But I think with the combination of all the attacks right now, it's going to be a little bit tough. Kartana taking a lot of damage from that Sucker Punch. Waiyin's will move first, will land a Sacred Sword, but all of those Intimidates from earlier coming back to haunt her. Ryosuke shows how much you can do without that many Intimidates down. And Ryosuke Kondo is going to win round 3 here in Nashville, advancing with a 3-0 record.